So the Bahrain Grand Prix has been and gone, and it's fair to say, probably not the best.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Especially considering you guys only gave it a 2.7, which for a season opener, yeah, it's pretty bad. But despite the race maybe not being the best, that doesn't mean we can't have a look at some of the drivers' performances and of course judge exactly how they've done. Because what else is the internet for except judging other people? Now for this year I'm changing up just a little bit, where I'm going to be going through my top 5 and worst 5 drivers from the race that's just gone, having a look at them in a bit more detail, and then I'll give you the full list of ratings at the end. So with that out of the way, now you know what's going on, let's get into my race ratings for the 2024 Bahrain Grand Prix. Starting off with Esteban Ocon. I mean, the Alpines were bound to be in this list after the way their season started. Ultimately for Esteban, he spent pretty much most of the time at the back of the pack and couldn't really make any progress forward. The only reason he's slightly higher than Pierre Gasly in these ratings is, well, because he finished just ahead of Pierre Gasly. For Alpine, things look pretty bleak, and not going to lie, I'm not quite sure exactly how they're going to improve from here, considering how far back and how far they've fallen. So for Esteban Ocon, for the first race, he's only going to get a 5. Bearing in mind average is about 5.5 for these, so getting a 5, it's not the worst result for the first race, mostly down to his car. Next up, as the 4th worst driver, is, well, the other Alpine of Pierre Gasly. You could basically just take exactly what we've gone through for Esteban and just hit Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V and paste it for Pierre Gasly. Other than the fact that Pierre started 1 place behind Esteban and finished 1 place behind him, they pretty much had exactly the same scenario. The car was rubbish. However, that doesn't stop you from maybe trying to pull something out of the bag, especially considering that that back half of the grid is a bit further away from the top half and are much closer together than, say, the gap between Aston Martin and the rest of them. As mentioned in Esteban's segment, the reason that Pierre is just 1 place lower than Esteban is, well, because he finished 1 place lower, and so ultimately when it comes down to trying to beat your teammate, he didn't do as well. For Gasly, just like his teammate, he's also getting a 5, and ultimately if your car's really rubbish and you've only got your teammate to race, the least you can do is try and beat them. Third from the bottom now, and we turn to Sauber, or Kick, or Steak, I'm not quite sure which one they were in this one, and it's Valtteri Bottas. Ultimately for him, yes, a lot of things were undone by the fact that his pit stop was, well, one of the worst we've seen in quite some time, pretty much the worst since, well, his one back in 2021. However, for most of the rest of the race, it was pretty uninspiring as well. Managed to get himself involved with pretty much the only multi-car incident in the race as he found himself kind of nudging the back of Nico Hülkenberg into turn 1. I think as well, Bottas' low rating here is going to come from the fact that his teammate Joe was so much further up ahead of him, even before Valtteri had that really long pit stop. For Valtteri in this one, while obviously the Sauber is not the best of cars, it still only gets him a 4. It's not the best race and not the way he would have wanted to start the season. Second worst now, and we turn to one of our Haas drivers, it's Nico Hülkenberg. After having an amazing qualifying on the Saturday up in 10th place, making his way into Q3, just 1 place behind the likes of Lewis Hamilton, well, it all went wrong by turn 1. Yes, he did get a little nudge from Bottas and that kind of sent him slightly into Lance Stroll, but ultimately you can sort of see from the footage he's just sticking his nose really where it shouldn't have gone. From there it put him right towards the back of the pack and that was pretty much his race ruined, especially considering we didn't have any other virtual safety cars or full safety cars to really help him out. Couple that in with the fact that his teammate Magnussen was much higher up the field in 12th place, and well, you can see exactly why he's getting a low rating. So for Nico Hülkenberg, race 1 of the season, involved in the only incident, 3.5. And finally, the worst driver from the Bahrain Grand Prix, it's the worst remaining driver from last year, Logan Sargeant. Things didn't start off too awful, qualifying wasn't great, but the race was going generally fine, until then he went to the turn 4 runoff and just sort of chilled there for a bit. It looked like he had some sort of lock-up and then went off, and just couldn't really get back into the race very quickly. I think when you consider the fact that Valtteri had as long of a pit stop as he did, and still finished ahead of Sargeant, you've got to ask what's going on there. Coupled with the fact that clearly that mistake was pretty much his own fault, I don't really know what else you can say for Logan. There's no real reason behind exactly why he made it, and that just killed the rest of his race. So Logan gets the worst rating for Bahrain and gets a 3. Into the top half now, and starting in 5th place, we have someone who I really never thought would appear in this top 5, it's Lance Stroll. I mean, Enzo did predict him to finish 3rd, and getting 5th, I guess, in these ratings isn't too bad. For Lance, obviously he was tagged by Hülkenberg in that opening corner, opening lap incident, spun him round and sent him to the back of the pack until Nico had to pit for a front wing. But from there, the recovery drive was pretty good. Obviously, the Aston Martin isn't quite as good as the likes of the Mercedes, the McLarens, especially the Ferraris and the Red Bulls. However, it is definitely that 5th place team. And when you consider that Lance was dead last after the first corner, to end up exactly 1 place behind your teammate, who is Fernando Alonso, is a really good recovery drive. So the first race, the first racing for Stroll of the season, he gets a 7. He's off to a good start. In 4th place now, and again someone I really didn't expect to be seeing so early on, it's Zhou Guanyu. Now normally it's hard for drivers who are in the worst cars and don't really have that much opportunity to be getting those high ratings. However, for Zhou, he did really well. Finishing up in P11th after starting down in 17th is just a really solid drive, especially when you consider he was pretty much solidly ahead of Valtteri for most of the race, and then when you look at the fact that he's only 1 point away from the points, effectively making him best of the rest out of those bottom 5 teams. It's a really solid drive from the Chinese driver to start the year. Hopefully he can really build from this and cement himself as a driver that deserves a seat going forward. It's definitely a great start, and so for the opening round of the season for Zhou, it's a 7.5. Into 3rd place now, and someone who really didn't have a great year last year, but has started off Bahrain pretty well, it's Sergio Perez. Starting in 5th place, which as Perez qualifying goes, isn't the worst, but he made quick progress and obviously throughout the race was never overtaken, never really looked under threat, just steadily making his way up past drivers and into that 2nd place. When he was in that 2nd place as well, when he was put on the soft tyres at the end, made them last really well. We heard over the radio Ferrari telling Sainz that, don't worry, those softs will go off and you'll be able to catch him, and that wasn't just the case. Checo really did well to manage those tyres to the end, build a gap on Sainz behind, and ultimately when you're finishing 2nd to Max Verstappen, who started on pole and had a bit of a lead by the time you got into 2nd place, it's a pretty good drive for Sergio Perez to start the year, especially when you consider how last year went. So for Checo, race 1, he's going to get an 8. Into 2nd place then, and we turn to the other Red Bull driver, Max Verstappen. Yes, it's a Grand Slam. Yes, everything has gone absolutely well for him. However, when I look at Max Verstappen drives and ones that have got 10s in the past, this isn't quite there for me. It's a really good drive, don't get me wrong, he's been absolutely faultless. Off the line, held P1, built a gap really quickly, and always looked like he was comfortable. In fact, winning the race by over 20 seconds, a much bigger margin than last year, really shows just how dominant a drive it was. But as I say, something was just kind of missing for me to really give him that 10 rating. I've given it him in the past, but for this one, not quite. So for Max Verstappen, he's going to get a 9 to start the year. Leaving in 1st place, someone who's not a Red Bull driver and not someone who's really had to come up from the back of the pack, it's Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. Carlos is obviously being dropped at the end of the year, and he's really taken that personally, it seems. Wanting to show Ferrari exactly what he's made of, and he's really done that in race 1. Going up the grid from 4th to 3rd to 2nd, and then back down to 3rd, it's a really good performance from him as a whole. He's had to overtake his teammate not once but twice, both of them really good moves, as well as getting past George Russell when he had the opportunity to, and then obviously having a small chance at getting Checo Perez for 2nd. I think for Carlos, a driver that's really putting himself in the shop window for the end of the season, he's off to a great start and will be looking to continue that momentum throughout the next few races. For Carlos in race 1, he's going to get a 9, again just slotting ahead of Max Verstappen because relative to the pace of their cars and having to overtake different people, I think Carlos has had that slightly better race. So there you have my race ratings for round 1 in Bahrain, obviously the top 5 and the bottom 5 that we've gone through, every driver finishing this race and getting a rating for this one. But anyway, that's all for now. I hope you have enjoyed. Please make sure to give the video a thumbs up and get yourself subscribed to the channel. Let me know any thoughts in the comments about the new format of the videos as well. And until next time, take care.